Hey people, do you want to get your music into Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Tidal, and all the rest of the streaming services? Check out DistroKid. It's affordable and super easy to use. I've used it to distribute my music and I really dig it. Our listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/talkguitars. That's 30% off for our listeners at distrokid.com/talkguitars. Go get it. Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and we're doing another 3 for 3 where Chris and I swap songs and talk about what we think of them, the guitar stuff, the songs in general, kind of our feelings about the music. And so the songs Chris sent me to check out are number 1, Kiss from their first album, Let Me Know, New York Dolls, Personality Crisis, and Peter Case, Walk in the Woods. And so I'll start with the Kiss tune because I was a Kiss fan when I was younger. And it was cool to revisit the old stuff from the first freaking album. Because one of the things about Kiss is, people would see the makeup. And I think, even I think at the time thought their music would be heavier than it was in the beginning. Like you think of heavy metal like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or any of that other stuff. And to be honest, at the time I was into Kiss, I don't even know if I was exposed to some of that heavier metal. But I think in my mind, I saw the makeup and the outfits and everything else. My imagination just said that their music has to be insane. And then you listen to it and it's rock and roll. It's like, which is cool, which I dig. And it makes sense because those guys are all of an age where they grew up with rock and roll, probably Chuck Berry and all that other stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're very influenced by that stuff, and that's what influenced their music. And so Let Me Know, off their first album, is very much a rock and roll song. It's got that raw rock and roll guitar. It's got the kind of the rock and roll, I don't know it's not a shuffle, but boom, but don't, the that rock classic, and roll sound. Yeah, the classic rock and roll sound. And I really dug it. I dug the vocals and the guitar part and the whole rock and roll vibe that is infused in that song. And I listened to the whole album too, which was kind of fun, and just, reacquainted myself with that old Kiss stuff. But that song was really cool. What made it jump out to you that you wanted to choose this for your 3 for 3?
These 3 for 3s usually have a stack of records sitting out that I've been listening to, and I'll listen to an artist for a while, so I might throughout the week listen to like 4 albums by a certain artist. And that's happened with this Kiss. A friend of mine gave me the Kiss Alive 2, which I never owned. So, I dug that out and was listening to that. And then I went back and listened to all these. And when I listened to the first record, that song struck me as kind of almost a throwaway in the context of that record. They never played it live or whatever. And I guess it was a very early song of theirs. But the thing I liked about that is that it's that Chuck Berry thing you're talking. It's not a shuffle, but it's that jonka-donka-donk.
Yeah.
And they have it like really, really crudely. And that was kind of the signature during that era of Kiss. You heard that on nearly every song, Strutter and whatnot. But this song in particular shows something about the band that I've always thought, but I don't know if people really appreciate or get, because Kiss is always thought of phenomenal live band. Part of the reason because Gene Simmons won't shut the fuck up about that. But you listen to this song and a couple of things are apparent. They were huge Beatles fans. They were huge into like songwriting. Like they just got it, even though they weren't musically very savvy, like theory wise, they really instinctively knew how to craft a song using hooks, melody, the lyrics, whatever. But, you listen to that and it's just this classic pop song. It's, pop rock song. And they always had that throughout that record. So that one I chose. I was going to do Nothing to Lose because that's a really cool song. It has a lot of the same things.
That is cool.
But everybody knows that. And, I chose this one because I kind of forgot about it, but it just showcases what you can do with a finely put together song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, lyrically, whatever, Kiss had this great knack for coming up with these killer hooks and these killer melodies and stuff, but then it was kind of wasted on their pedo and, there's bullshit lyrics songs. So take, what is it? Love Gun, that riff, this incredible catchy riff, melody, and it's basically "Lick My Love Pump" without the satire element of it, So
Huh.
that song was so old that I don't think they were there yet. I don't know. I think that was Paul Stanley's song, but it may have been Gene Simmons. Another thing that's really interesting about that band, especially early on, is you'll hear it in that song and Nothing to Lose as well. They trade off
Hmm.
vocals really well. Like they'll have someone sing a different part and it just works really well. It's like it starts out with
Yeah,
Gene Simmons singing and Paul Stanley comes in on the bridge or the chorus or whatever, and it just really sets it up good. Peter Criss would be singing sometimes. They did that vocal trade thing they did really well, and that makes the songs pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, just to think of those guys, just kind of dumb New Yorkers, they definitely spent some time studying pop music and
they did.
so it's very apparent on those songs. I mean, I kind of love the fact that they're like the perfect kid band back when I was coming up.
Oh, totally.
Kiss had all of these little 12 and 13-year-olds walking around the house singing about anal sex. I had no idea. It took me forever. I had no idea what that song was about, but it
Oh,
was
that's
so
so funny.
catchy. It was
Yeah,
so catchy and so poppy. It would
yeah,
just get stuck in your head.
yeah,
They were the perfect band for kind of falling in love with a band as a kid, and then for like the next 3 Halloweens you went as a member of Kiss or something like that.
totally.
It was just a reminder that this band has a long, long ass history, but they really knew how to put some hooky songs together, and that was a good indication of
They
that. That's why I
did.
chose that.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it is a deeper cut that is lesser known. That's what I really dug about it. I don't even know if I remember listening to that song when I was a kid, but yeah, for all the reasons you just cited, I dig that song and I dig all of that early Kiss stuff. And you're right. I mean, if you listen to their stuff and you really listen to, I mean, it's not high art, but it is perfect for a young, pimply faced rocker to get lost in this silly rock and roll world, comic book rock and roll world. It's perfect. It's a perfect matchup for any young aspiring rocker to
And
get on.
yeah, and also Ace Frehley is pretty awesome. I mean, I
Yeah.
love, you know, my journey as a guitar player. When I first picked up the guitar, I was into anything to do with guitar. Anyone who was playing, my eyes were glued to them. What is this?
Yeah.
What is this strange thing? And then you get just a little bit competent, and then you get all like shitty, like, this guitar player isn't very good. This guitar player isn't very good. And I don't know that I actually did that with Ace Frehley, but I kind of like dismissed him for a long time. I outgrew
Yeah.
Kiss when I was still young. I mean, I was in
Yeah.
like, when I went into high school, I was no longer in Kiss. I mean,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
like, that's a child's band. But, after I got older and let go of all this shit, I kind of revisited them and liked them. But, that whole dissing on guitar players, as you get older, and for me anyways, as I get older and my guitar journey goes on, I'm right back to where I started. I think everything is cool. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you listen to Ace Frehley, I kind of joke he's like a guitar player who kind of plays like he's making fun of guitar players
Yeah.
because he does this thing where he like, it's almost like he's skipping. He gets stuck in this repeatable thing and he's just going and going and going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like somebody kick him, he's stuck. But it's really cool. I mean, the only other guitar player that does that same kind of thing for me was Bob Stinson from The Replacements. He
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
another one that just had that really crazy style. I don't know. Ace Frehley is definitely worth checking out and listening to because he's got some really cool shit on those early records. And that particular song, Let Me Know, it's just again, Chuck Berry. You can't overstate how important that dude was to
Oh, totally.
everything that is rock and roll. But it's definitely there in that song. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Kiss. I had like a whole week of Kiss, and I'm really thankful for that band, I guess.
That's cool. Yeah. And just one more thing. I'm glad you touched on that too. I was kind of the same way where I reached a point where I started getting judgy on guitarists and stuff, but over time just learned to really appreciate all. Yeah. And Ace is sloppy and crazy in all the best ways possible as a guitar player. That's rock and roll. I just see him fucking hunched over that Les Paul, just sloppily doing his licks and stuff and the licks he does like in a lot of that stuff are cool.
Yeah.
They're very rock and roll. They're very just in that vein of yeah. So I totally appreciate it too. Him as a guitar player.
There was some shit that he did, and I forget which song in particular that the guitar player who replaced him, who was like this really hot, like by the book, like shredder dude. He couldn't do. I mean,
Yeah.
I do see that kind of slop thing that I don't think it's that sloppy, but it's just raw, and that's what I like about it.
Maybe raw
Rob
is the
Simpson,
right.
the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's super super raw, but I would say it's a little sloppy, especially the live stuff, but
Yeah.
all in all the good ways. Like
Yeah.
Jimmy Page was sloppy,
I
but
totally agree.
listening to him, there's a lot of cool shit that is just like, I forgot about that. And that is such a Ace Frehley signature lick. And I totally forgot about it. Again, mining Chuck Berry, but he did something really cool and interesting with it. So
Totally.
yeah, Kiss. Yeah.
Awesome. Kiss Army, baby. All right. So the one I gave you, the first one I gave you was the Stones Tumbling Dice.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So I think we were just talking about that in the capo episode where, because he
Oh
capos
yeah,
at,
yeah, yeah.
is it the
Yeah.
fourth fret? I think it's the fourth fret to play the B. The song is in B. That is the Rolling Stones groove. That's huge. My whole life of guitar has been based on that, trying to find that groove and trying to get that guitar thing going with the groove. It'll forever be in my DNA. And I mentioned before, when I was writing songs, I kept trying to write Sweet Virginia or Dead Flowers over and over. But this one, Tumbling Dice, was one of those also. You know what I mean? And actually, if you listen to the very first Evangeline record, the opening song, I totally stole that opening lick from
That's
him.
awesome.
It's not quite the same, and the song has quite a bit different feel, but it's definitely, I'm taking that, and I use
It's
that.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, that the feel of that song is just incredible. And the way that all the instruments work around each other, it's this groove that from heaven that nobody else could do that. I've actually been in this mode where I was checking a lot of the 70s live stuff. There's a lot of good shit in there. And watching Mick Taylor, watching him figure his shit out, because he got kind of thrown into that. That guy is playing through the whole fucking song. I mean, he's like noodling like crazy, and it never seems like he's able to keep it on the vocal. And there's so
yeah.
many signature things. It's really cool to watch that. So yeah, that song was pretty timely. And I will say, like a little sidebar is, I think Linda Ronstadt's band did a really good version of that.
Oh
She was
yeah,
great at picking great songs and
totally.
delivering them too.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's completely different, very respectable take on that song. But
agreed.
anyways, back to the Rolling Stones. But yeah, I love that song. I've always loved that song, and there'll never be a time when that song comes on that I don't turn it up. It's just, it's
Totally. I love that song and I love the intro. It's just like it's like a slinky falling down a stairs or something.
right.
It's just like this smooth drunken stagger into the song and I
And
love it.
Into the Pocket. Yeah, it's like
Totally. I mean
Charlie
yeah.
Watts,
No,
like
it's
his.
fucking the whole song is feel and the feel is so that song in terms of feel is one of these songs that I think captures a feel better than any other song I've heard. And it maintains, like you were saying, it maintains it. And I love the Mick Taylor years in the Stones because I think he brought so much to that band. I mean, the bands are obviously great by themselves, but he brought
Right.
this other X factor to them that just this, like you were talking about the stuff he did in the song that was not getting in the way of the vocals. It was tasty, but it was just what was called for. And he just had a creative mind in terms of thinking about music and songs and serving the songs. But yeah, the feel of that song is just what gets me every time.
Charlie Watts was always good for, like, I love his fills. It's like, it sounds like
Me
he's going to
too.
fall apart and then it just boom in the pocket, slightly behind the beat. That and Happy from that record are,
I love that song. Yeah,
well,
too.
that whole record is like
Yeah,
incredible. I mean, that's
yeah,
one of those things that, people talk about that record so much and it's like, yeah, I'm sick of hearing about Exile, but it's fucking amazing.
yeah. There's a reason people talk about it.
Yeah. So, Sticky Fingers, that was another one, and Goat's
Yeah,
Head Soup, that was another one that Mick was on, and those
yeah.
are some of my favorite
But
by
like you
far.
say, Charlie Watts, like I think these drummers that weren't necessarily flashy, but just pocket drummers and tasty. I mean, it's hard to say because he was in one of the most popular bands in the world. But he and Ringo and other drummers that kind of get uh I don't know, overlooked a little bit in terms of, because they're in the shadow of other band members
Right.
that are great, and then also just, other drummers that are kind of recognized as these, powerhouses in that on that instrument, like
Right.
Bonham and other people. But man, Watts was so great. I'm glad you cited that too, because when last time I was listening to that for this purpose, I was really getting into the drums on the headphones and just saying, God damn it, that guy is so fucking good. And just,
Yeah.
I love the subtle fills he does that are just enough to
Yeah.
take you from one part of the song to the next. I love that stuff.
No, and I get what you're saying. He doesn't get some of the accolades that he did, but everybody who plays music and knows music
They know. Yeah.
loves that guy. They know.
Totally.
Screw everybody that doesn't, it's everybody else, because he was amazing.
I agree. All right. So the number two song Chris gave me was New York
No, like,
Dolls.
we're doing one of yours.
Oh, we're doing one
Oh,
of
that
mine.
was one of yours. Oh
That was
shit. Fucking pay attention.
we're
Jesus. My
senile.
cat is going nuts. She just keeps walking around meowing and everything else. She wants my attention. So she's got me all flustered.
So the second one Chris gave me was from the New York Dolls called Personality Crisis. And I got to admit, I wasn't super into the New York Dolls when I was younger. I don't know. They just weren't on my radar as much as many, many other bands. But over time, I've come to really appreciate them. And for me, I don't consider them so much a glam band as a punk rock band, I think. To me, listening, it's cool. Just another sidebar. Doing this really, I really appreciate it because it makes me listen to songs, A, that I haven't really listened to before, or B, revisit stuff that I visited a long time ago and then gives me a new appreciation for these artists and or maybe new perspective on these artists. Because I don't know really what I thought about the New York Dolls back when I was younger. I kind of did maybe think they were glam or something like that. But to me, they're just punk rock. And this song, Personality Crisis, is very punk rock, I think. And again, maybe the raw theme will be throughout all these songs because I really dig raw guitar, raw stuff. But the guitar on this song is just a quintessential rock and roll guitar sound. And I don't know, is it the Junior? Is it the P90? Or I don't know what it is, but it just sounds so fucking good and so
It
killer.
was a Gibson, and it's funny because it's the Kiss. It's the same thing as Kiss. It's the same
Yeah.
that's why I picked those two. New
Yeah.
York City around
Yeah.
the same time, the same references,
Yeah.
and it's like the same thing. Only there's two completely different takes.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Totally. Totally. And it is you get a sense of again, to me the common thread too in the stuff you sent me that was really cool is well, with these two bands especially, but is the rock and roll kind of lineage back to Chuck Berry and all that other stuff. You can hear it in Kiss, you can hear it in the New York Dolls big time, but they just put such an edge on it, and Johansson's just crazy vocally, but I just came away from it thinking this is punk rock, man. And I dug it. I dug the vibe that they were communicating through this song. And again, I listened to all the other stuff, all the other Dolls stuff as I was doing this assignment. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was just cool to hear this in this context as, older and not really listening to the New York Dolls much lately. Yeah, I just identified them as like early punk rock, which was super cool. What's your take on them?
Well, I picked them because the Kiss record kind of reminded me of that, and I wanted to dig out some Dolls. And it's so interesting there how much they parallel each other. I mean, the New York Dolls was slightly earlier, but you just know that Kiss was at their shows, checking them out. They had the same thing. It's that Chuck Berry little bam bam. And that song in particular, that's the first song that I ever heard by them. I was familiar with them as a kid, like reading Cream magazine and like, who are these? These guys look cool. I never bought any of those records because I didn't want to take a chance. Record money was so scarce. It's like, I don't know. I
Right.
don't want to take a chance. So I never really bought any of the records, but I always thought I would really like these. I probably wouldn't have at that stage when I found them, but when I did find them, it was like amazing hearing that song and the amount of fucking energy in that song. This band was like the most exciting thing in the world when it hit. Like everybody,
Yeah.
there's so many times when like it'd be like Aerosmith or even Lynyrd Skynyrd were called the American Stones. Those guys were the fucking American Stones. The
Yeah.
Dolls were pure adrenaline rock and roll, and it's again paralleling Kiss. They're singing about sex and partying. Kiss was singing about sex and partying, but one of them's like from like a 12-year-old writing about it, and the other one is like a young adult writing about it. Energy in both bands, but that song in particular, when that kicks in, I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, holy shit. That song and Trash from the same records, infectious. Where the fuck didn't I have these guys
Yeah.
earlier? And I guess you can really see that, yeah, they kind of like helped kickstart the punk thing, but that song, Personality Crisis, is just pure rock and roll. I mean, it's got the boogie woogie piano, and that's another thing. That's a 3-chord song, and it never, I mean, there's so much going on in that song that is working towards that energy, the
Yeah.
piano, the bass. Arthur Kane's like rudimentary bass, but he's doing fills or walks just in the right places. Everything just moves. And Johnny Thunders, I mean, he's like Ace Frehley too. He kind of can slide up the neck on the strings, and it's like maybe a little bit pitchier. When he does that, it's Johnny Thunders. He's the only one
Yeah.
that can play like that. All attitude and all rock and roll. Just fucking amazing. I mean, his guitar sound is just a twin reverb, just crank the shit out of it. Probably if I had a time machine and I wanted to go back to some time, that would be one time I would want to go to New York City and, see them when they were, that initial excitement that they had when that band came out. That band was like a really, really big deal. So I thought of the Kiss song because I was listening to it, and then I went and grabbed that because I'm like, but my head was in the New York early rock, New
Yeah.
York stuff. So that's why I picked that one.
That's super cool. And yeah, I got a sense of that just listening to them again, of the kind of, you can hear kind of the urgency and the dynamism of the band that seems like it's a short-lived excitement. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I kind of, hearing their music, you kind of get a sense that this is like just this is a one-way train
Right.
that's going to crash
Right.
soon, which is, I mean, it's kind of sad, but it's kind of cool at the same time, because I mean, capturing that kind of energy on a record is insane. And yeah, like you said, the live shows must have been crazy. Like, it would have been cool to see them at some club in New York, kind of when they were just starting to break or on their way up. It probably was just insane. But
Yeah.
that's what I picked up too, is that energy in that they exuded. Just you got a feeling like you're on this train and it's going to crash. And yeah, there's a
Yeah. They were
limited,
never,
there's a shelf life to this band.
they were never going to put out a concept record, two records, and be hugely in the story of rock and roll for me.
Totally cool, man. All right, so my second one that I gave to you was the Pretenders, "The Wait," off their first album.
But I like this one because I think I said before, because you did a Pretenders once before, and I was familiar with all the stuff on the radio and I always liked them, but I never owned any records. So it's very possible that that was the first time that I ever heard that song, which is
Oh
super
man.
cool, I think. My first thought was, are they making a pun on the band? Like The Wait by the
Oh,
band?
right.
Were they aware of that, or was it kind of like a joke? Or secondly, is again, talking about energy. There's so much energy in that song. It's raw, pure rock and roll sound. I mean, is she coughing some of those lyrics? It sounds like it. It sounds like she's
Isn't it cool?
coughing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like some really interesting, like a guitar raking, like a shuffling of the guitar strings.
Yeah.
And the solo is incredible because I don't know what's making that sound at the beginning of it, but it's really fucking cool. It's this weird noise, like, I don't know, like a fan feeding back into a refrigerator. I don't know. It's just some weird sound that I couldn't recognize. And then he
Yeah.
does a really cool raw solo. To me, when I was listening to that, it was like, that is what that band was at that time. It was just pure energy. There's nothing, there's not a lot of, shit on that song. It's just all energy,
No.
pure rock. I dug it.
That's cool, man. I'm glad you did. Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs by that band. I think they were just great songwriters. Like the cool suspense they kind of invoke with the intro, right? Just hitting those chords like dun dun at the intro sets up them going into the verses and the main part of the song. And I think it's so well done. It's like I think, again, like, I think people think about the Pretenders and they think about that they're a cool band, but as a songwriting band, they were pretty damn good. And I think that's, hats off to Chrissie Hynde. And I think James Honeyman Scott was a force in that. The band was great.
Yeah.
You mentioned the bass player Pete Farndon. He's one of my favorite bass players of all time. But this song in particular, I just love. Just like you said, the energy is so fucking great. The solo is cool because it's just chaos. And it just, like you're saying, there's
I
a
don't know
bunch
what
of
that is
stuff going on. I don't even know what it is either, but there's a lot of guitar that's just like being bent, and bends and going up the neck. And it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me, I don't know, it's analogous a little bit to like that part in Day in a Life where the orchestra is kind of just going ape
Right.
shit. And then all of a sudden it comes back. And it's very similar to that, only it's done in the context of this four-piece rock band where they're just kind of going off, and then all of a sudden it goes boom, da 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 da. Yeah, and you're right. The delivery of the vocals is so fucking awesome. It's very percussive and very.
Sounds like she's coughing.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
But you can tell they're having fun. You can hear them having fun with the song.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs, and that's my favorite Pretenders album. Is that first album? I just think
That's a
it's
good record.
the best. Every song on it's great. Cool. Well, the third one Chris gave me was Peter Case, "Walk in the Woods." And Peter Case was a guy from the 80s. He was in a band called the Plimsolls, and he did some solo stuff too. Really cool singer-songwriter, essentially. He had a great voice. I shouldn't talk about it. He's still alive, isn't he, Peter Case?
He is, and still making music.
He's still making music. So he's got a killer voice, and his solo stuff, this song is more acoustic, his vocals, and it's more stripped down. Well, the Plimsouls were kind of a pop rock band, or like, would you say that, or pop alt or
Yeah,
something? Or
some may have called them like new wave at the
yeah,
time. Because
yeah,
I wouldn't think. I mean, it was just like pop rock. That's what I'd call them. But
yeah.
they were on that around that era. So they probably some people thought, is that band new wave? That's a new wave band. Their big hit was A Million Miles Away. And
Yeah,
I think they were in the Valley Girl soundtrack. They may have
they
been the
were.
band.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. So his solo stuff is more, I guess, for lack of a better term, Americana or stripped down, kind of acoustic harmonica. And this song in particular kind of embodies that whole vibe that Peter Case was going for at that time. Yeah, I love the harmonica. Sounds to me like he's playing a small box guitar, maybe like a Gibson J something. I don't know if you know what he was playing, but I love that sound because it's kind of boxy and chunky, and I just love that kind of guitar sound in the context of kind of a singer-songwriter. And I love his voice. I think he's got one of the coolest voices in rock. It's kind of raspy, but it's soulful and it's got feel to it. Is it on his first solo
it
record?
is. It's
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
record just called Peter Case. It's the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah. So give me your take on why you chose this song.
Well, I chose it because we were having a discussion. You were talking about kind of wanting to work up some sort of like solo acoustic
Ah,
thing or,
right.
play. And I think I mentioned you should try a harmonica. It's a good thing to do for a break. And then I remembered when I started playing harmonica in a rack and acoustic guitar, that this record was a huge influence on that. And I really liked that. So I went and I dug it out and I'm like, oh man, I forgot how much I like this record. And I picked that song because that is a perfect example of a 100% self-contained piece of storytelling. Every sound that you hear is telling the story, and it's brilliant. I'm nearly positive that he had to play and sing at the same time because his vocal and his guitar are like driving each other. It's changing, what's driving now? What's driving now? I don't
Yeah.
think there's any way you could overdub that. And the harmonica was overdubbed. Yeah, and it's just like the story is engaging, the way he tells it, the way the whole thing unfolds. It's, a short story with a guitar and a harmonica, basically.
Yeah.
That record has a bunch of songs on it that I really like, but that was like, I was really into that song for a long time. Yeah, and I saw him just after that. I thought it was this record, but the record after this is when I saw him, and he actually opened for John Lee Hooker at the Fox Theater in Detroit. And he did like the whole solo. He had like a suitcase up there with harmonicas and he had acoustic guitar. I think that caused me to get an acoustic guitar. I had a really shitty one. So I went to Elderly Instruments and bought a decent starter acoustic guitar. And that and the harmonica were definitely a direct result of that record. It was hugely influential on me, like wanting to just do solo stuff, which I eventually did. But I listened to that a bunch after I brought it up, and that was something that just totally I forgot about. I wonder
Yeah.
how many other
Yeah.
songs are like that, and it holds up really well too.
It does.
I was like
Yep.
thinking that maybe there's some 80s production issues on this record, but I
No.
listened to the whole thing. And it sounds really good.
All right. The third one I gave Chris was Wah Wah by George Harrison. What do you think of that tune, man?
What a great ender. All Things Must Pass is amazing record. It's one I can't live without, definitely. But it's so amazing that this ended up being the third song on the record, right after My Sweet Lord, because it's like the kitchen sink song. Wouldn't this close out one of the sides or even the whole thing? But he chose to put it third, which was really ballsy and great. And I like that about it. I mean, there's so much shit going on in the song. It's Phil Spector, so of course, but yeah, this is even for Phil Spector is like over the top. There's horns and guitars and just all kinds of shit, but it fucking works. And the first thing you notice about this song is as soon as it kicks off, you're like, fuck me, I didn't come up with that lick.
I know.
It's like one of those things like fucking $1 million lick that starts the song. It's like,
it's a great lick. Yeah.
It was like, what the fuck? Why can't I come up with something like that? It sounds so, it sounds like something you could do, but
Totally.
no. In the context of that record, I think it always kind of got sidetracked because I did think of kind of like, not like a throwaway, but lyrically compared to the other things on there, it was like something I always liked. I love the song, but something like Beware of Darkness or some of those other songs really spoke to me really deeply. But listening to this one now, I realize that it speaks to me deeply, and maybe for other reasons, maybe it's not lyrically. George Harrison was just a really interesting guitar player. Another thing I'm trying to work on as I get older is I'm trying to find more good in things before that maybe I made fun of or something like that. And take this song, this is going back to a different record, but on Abbey Road, that fucking Maxwell Silver Hammer, I used to joke that that's the song that broke up the fucking Beatles, whatever. And I listen to that song. I've been listening to that record a lot, like the last couple of years. The guitar on that song is amazing. The way that guitar sounds is just incredible. I don't know if that
Yeah.
was his Telecaster or that he
Mhm.
got some really cool sounds. Live Bangladesh thing too. He plays a lot of these
Oh man.
songs. He's a fucking great guitar player, and he has a really good knack for coming up with strange chord progressions that work really well. Interesting guitar line. He was a total guitar nerd too, and I like that
Yeah.
about him. I mean, he was the
Yeah.
one in the Beatles who was the biggest guitar nerd.
Yeah.
So
That's
good
so cool.
record, good song. Yeah, yeah, good drummer.
I always thought the same thing. Like when you really listen to what George is doing all throughout the Beatles career, he is an interesting guitar player. He does tasty stuff. He gets cool guitar sounds. This song is no different. And the thing I love is like you're saying it there's so much going on. There's these backing vocals, harmonies, there's his patented slide guitar work, that he does the harmony slide stuff that is throughout his guitar playing, especially during his solo stuff. And the lick is insane. But
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I listen to it and go, that's so simple. It's right there in front of your face. Why can't you?
Mm-mm.
But I think that's the thing is some people just go with it and others don't. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm always afraid like it sounds like something else or it's too trite
Yeah,
or
but
something like that. But man,
that
exactly.
doesn't. So it's like
Yeah.
he cracked the code. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
can come up
Yeah.
with licks all day. It's like, oh, this sentence got cool, but it's not that. You know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
million like that, and
Yeah.
I think if you
Yeah.
got one, you would know.
I
So
hope
it's
I
like,
would. I
but
hope
no,
I would.
I think the same way. It's like, I just don't trust myself. I think this sounds too cliche or something,
Yeah.
but it probably is. So
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think if I got one, that was like that killer, I would know. Hopefully I would know. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's $1 million. When I heard that right away and I remembered that song and like, oh, there's that fucking thing. Like, and I
Yeah.
think even he in later years was kind of like maybe expressed concern that maybe there was a little bit too much shit going on there. And I thought, because it's a long song too, and I'm listening
It
to it, and I'm
is.
like, there's a lot going. Is this too much? And I'm like, no fucking way. For that
No.
song, it's
No.
like that song is that song, and that's what sold it to me originally. And yeah, there's a lot going on, but there's a lot going on with the reason he wrote that song, and it needs to be like that
Totally.
cacophony of kitchen sink and shit.
And artists always second guess themselves or look back at work and maybe some of their best songs they thought were just a throwaway song. And it's like, well, let's put it on the
Right.
album, and it's like, so artists don't always, and well, often I think don't really know what they have, which is surprising to me. Sometimes they think this is a really good song, but a lot of times they write a song that they think it's okay and they put it on the album and then, people hear it and go, fuck, that's a masterpiece. And
Right.
I don't know if Wawa is a masterpiece, but it's a great fucking song. It's a great lick. And it's cool to see how he matured too out of that whole thing and that he had the goods. He was able to write great songs and he's got a great voice in his own right. And he's a great guitar player. I saw an interview with him where somebody's asking him about his guitar playing. And he said, well, I think I could have been much better if I'd practiced more. But, he did, but which is probably true, but he was a great guitar player nonetheless. I mean, it's
His
what,
signature, his slide sound.
oh,
Nobody's ever gotten his slide
no.
sound. You know what I
And it
mean?
sounds so cool. Well, that
No,
was awesome, dude. Another 3 for 3 in the books, baby.
Jesus.
If you're out there listening to us, please ping us, poke us, let us know what's going on, man. We're still members of the Ruinous Media Network and listen to us on Apple, Spotify, all the stuff. And check out chrisandricktalkguitars.com and shoot us a line, man. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, Chris, what do you got?
Goodbye. Play some guitar. Listen to some Beatles and shit. I don't know.